What is a MIDI keyboard? Well, if I said a MIDI keyboard is a keyboard that has MIDI, obviously it would sound like a smart aleck answer, but it's actually kind of correct. If you have a keyboard, whether it's a synthesizer or only plays piano or it plays piano and synthesizers and strings or whatever it is, if it makes its own sound and it has MIDI jacks on the back, then it's a MIDI keyboard. And that port on the back can either be the 5-pin DIN like this, which would use a jack like that, or it could be, this one's kind of new, but this is a 3.5 millimeter that then goes to the 5-pin DIN. And then there's also one where you do MIDI over USB. And this is usually if you're doing your keyboard to a computer to go to a digital audio workstation and you want to play notes, record it, and have it come back. And one of the main uses of MIDI in the early 80s was that you could play one keyboard and it would also play a second keyboard or a module. So you didn't need to have keys on the second thing. But as long as both of them had MIDI, you could go from MIDI out from one to the other. So I can play this synth. And of course I can reach over and play this synth. But with MIDI, if I take the MIDI out of this one to the MIDI in of this one, I should be able to play this one, hear this one, and also hear that one. And of course, MIDI can be much more complex than that. It can do more than just take the keys that you're pressing down and literally press down those keys over here. But you can also send knob commands and much more complex stuff. But the main thing is that you can play one MIDI keyboard and that will go to another synth or module. And now for the last example, I have a MIDI controller keyboard, which, you know, someone could say, well, that's a MIDI keyboard, but I usually use the words MIDI keyboard to define a keyboard that makes sound that also has MIDI. This is a MIDI controller keyboard because it does not make any sound on its own, but it can send MIDI to something else that does make sound. So as you can hear, no sound at all. And if I take MIDI out to that MIDI adapter, so now I'm going 3.5 millimeter TRS into this MIDI in, now I should be able to play it. And some of the cool things that you can do with a controller keyboard is, for example, use a sequence. So I could just play and have something that I've pre-recorded. Or I can do an arpeggiation where I hold chords and it runs through them like this. So if you have any further questions about MIDI keyboards, MIDI controllers, MIDI modules, or just MIDI, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. My name is Daniel Fisher. Thank you very much for watching.